But meanwhile, I think we're just having our last folks coming back in. We are the Rhode Island Guitar for Vets Band, which is made of teachers and friends and some graduates of our program. Let's see, are you around, Michelle? Sorry, I'm under the rotisserie lights. I can't see.
So hello everyone. My name is Michelle Cruz and I am the Director of Community Engagement here at Trinity Rep. You know, I've tried to imagine this night over and over again when I started back in July of 2019. I wanted to have a space for veterans to tell their stories, do readings, and just express themselves on our stages. And I'm glad this has come to fruition. We want to keep doing this again and again, and it brings a big smile to my face to see you all here. Without further ado, we want this to be a space of, for, and by our veterans. And it's been wonderful to get to know these folks, and this gentleman that's coming up has been pretty inspirational to me. And I think you'll find him inspirational as well. Without further ado, I want to introduce Big Lux.
Thank you, Michelle. Man, can't wait for that thing to kick in. But no, it's my honor and privilege to be here. This is an amazing event, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say. My own experience is that I am a former Army combat engineer. I grew up in Westerly, Rhode Island, and then I went to West Point and graduated in 2004. Shook Donald Rumsfeld's hand, and then went straight to Iraq, and then had like a 13-year career as a musician in an engineer officer's body. And I only recently got out like a few years ago to pursue music full-time. And one of the first things that I did was to write the song that you're about to hear. Of course I got that here.
You say the world won't change without you.
I did have a couple of friends helping Phil Boudreaux, Laura Downing on this track.
I suppose the letters from home will just do.
Dear Mom, just got back from patrol. We rolling down the road looking for bombs set to explode. Sitting in the desert, middle of a civil war. To fatten Sheeney's wallet and to settle Bush the score. Irrelevant intelligence, damn, shouldn't even be here. But I got this mission now, and somehow I'm the leader. I know that I'm a dead man and I know that I can't show it. But I got these killers with me, but we better own it while we rolling down these streets. And I sand other vehicles, death all around. We just hope we ain't beat them though. If he at the source, we got the swords. He at the source, we got the swords. We beating him with force, cause we invaders been staring with their naked hostility, needing us to judge which ones has the ability to prime demolitions, dig ditches, shake charges, put the bombs on the bag that'll hit us the hardest. Like,
Go ahead, go on chasing bombs. Save our kids and moms. You are not alone. We'll be here for you. We just want you home.
depending on these letters, the killing off emotion. Not feeling makes it better. Chasing bonds by day, chasing sleep by night. Told us we could see the world through the lens of a rifle's sight. They hit us with the boom, we bail out in the street. Rounds and fires, they cook off in the desert heat. Then we drag that burned out truck back to where our base is. Next morning, we come back out to find these bombs we chase it. Gunfight, they bust, we bust, they bust, we bust, they bust, we bust, they bust. The streets are filled with blood and dust. Memorial services for fellow spades departed. I played my violin to take my mind off the carnage. 2 sergeants got shot last week, they targeted our leaders. Our soldiers volunteer to swap snipers who wear Mercedes. Born killers who ride or die will never be defeated. Despite hearts as purple, we all come home to wonder.
Go
The hell's the
ahead,
meaning, man?
go on chasing
We never figured it out.
bombs. Save our kids and moms. You are not alone. We'll be here for you. For you. You say
snipers hit him, RPGs get him. It's a war with the rhythm, cause if they at the source, we got the swords hot. Cause if they at the source, we got the swords, get him.
Go ahead, go on chasing bombs.
That means so much coming from this crowd. The most important part about that story is that all my soldiers came home alive and well, and like I still do not know by what means or how, but everybody is alive and kicking, safe and sound. Though not everybody from the unit. We did the platoon leader who replaced me. He recently took his life about a month ago, and so we're all still trying to deal with that. But no, that's my story. That's what I have to say. So I appreciate it. Michelle, thank you for bringing me in and giving me this opportunity.
Another round of applause for Big Lex.
My name is Thomas Gamache. Hello? My name is Thomas Gamache, not Ganache as it says in your program. Subtleness. I actually had the pleasure of having known Big Lex since I was in middle school. He was groomsmen my wedding. We were friends for a long time. Now I get to work with him, and it's really special to kind of follow him. It's unfortunate to follow him in a public performance, because how do you follow that? But it's really an honor to share a stage with him. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing me here, and Trinity Rep for putting this together. Again, I'm Thomas Gamache. I'm a writer. I live in Westerly, Rhode Island, North Stellington area. I work and live in that area now. I'm a fiction and nonfiction writer, and I tend to focus on mental health aspects, PTSD, the mental health that people don't want to talk about, that the veterans tend to experience on the front line when they get home, and perpetually through the years thereafter, that no one likes to talk about. So my reading is a story that was published earlier this year by Collateral Journal. It's listener advisory. It's got some sort of graphic stuff in it. Brace yourself, but it's something up everyone takes a little something from. Seeing ghosts. It all started with convoys. Convoys were tense, the threat of death waiting in any car, on any rooftop, in any window, ditch, or pothole, any trash bag on the sidewalk. The insurgents hinted at danger everywhere. Cardboard cutouts of posters in windows, trash piled in alleys to look vaguely like people, clothes hung just so on the edges of rooftops, where no Iraqi would ever hang laundry because of the dust storms. They put possible threats everywhere to keep us on edge, to heighten our intensity. And because they could be anywhere, we started seeing threats everywhere, even when there wasn't another living person for miles. We called it seeing ghosts. Boo. Another helicopter down, this one outside of Baghdad. About 10 minutes, and the downed aircraft recovery team was on the road. 3 dune buggies speeding ahead and a pair of trucks lagging way behind. We marked on site exactly 24 minutes after dispatch. 2 aviation soldiers scurrying across the downed bird, stripping night vision sensors, weapons targeting systems, classified avionics. The Rangers stand watch the dune buggies, our lives in their hands as we focus on the mission. Support trucks arrive 5 minutes later. Driving's wearing night vision goggles and drive without headlights. Flares and anti-air tracer munitions provide intermittent light like fireworks, but NVGs are necessary for blackout driving. Voices speak Arabic, loud and excited, coming for the helicopter. They're close enough to hear their footprints and the rattle of their rifles as they move. Soldiers jump from the support trucks, rush to the bird, and carry away all the tasty bits we've carved off. It's Thanksgiving in April, and we're about ready to cook. 1 load, 2 loads, parts thrown into the back of the trucks, barely muffled by the wool blankets laid in piles on the truck bed. Voices grow louder. Theirs at first, then one of ours. Contact, 12 o'clock. Kill goggles, lighted. We don't have everything, but we've got enough. The trucks are pulling out already, heading back the way they came. All clear, screams over the radio. And as soon as the buggies are turned around, we hit the bird with thermite grenades. There's a lot of light, a lot of smoke, and about $60 million worth of melting slack to cover our evacuation. The white light behind casts shadows all around us. And in those shadows, we can't help but see the dark shapes of people, watching, silent, hovering somewhere between being there and not, possibly existing only because we think they do. They're everywhere, and they follow us on every hop we run. Boom. We officially hit the highway on March 20th, 2003. And on May 1st, 2003, Bush gave his famous Mission Accomplished speech aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln. Later that night, I lost a friend I'm not supposed to talk about on a mission that didn't happen. The sun hung low, casting just enough light to watch dust curl in the wind along the road. I was one of the lucky ones. My Humvee 2 vehicles behind when the IED blew. There was no daisy chain, no follow-up sniper fire, just a single device that took out a single truck and killed a single soldier. A medic struggled in vain to save his life, while I secured the perimeter and looked for enemies that weren't there. I didn't realize what seeing ghosts really meant. Not yet. Boom. 5 years down the road, I'm driving my pickup home on a snowy New England evening. It's a long drive home from Yukon, and I'm on autopilot, cruising down a mostly empty road, thinking about Cartesian dualism. The streets are well plowed, the snow just a light powder. It's so light that it blows along in the wind, curling in the evening light and drifting along the side of the road, like Iraqi dust. I see the flash, hear the explosion, feel the concussion of the blast, and force my body pressing against the seatbelt. I lock up the brakes of my truck. None of this is real, of course, or at least none of it is happening right now. Despite what my mind sees and my body feels, Danny's gone, and I'm not really in the desert. The seatbelt is real. I take a breath, and I come to at once, back in my truck on the snowy New England road. But I'm not driving. I'm stopped just off the road, well into someone's yard. My foot pressed so hard on the brake, my leg trembles. My heart hammers through the tightness in my chest, and there's cold sweat on my forehead, despite the breeze blowing through the open driver's side window. There's nothing there, nothing in front of me. But I see it again anyway. Boom. The war was over. Peacekeeping had begun. We spent less time on the road in hot zones, more time safeguarding bases against guerrilla warfare. We didn't grow complacent, but we grew more comfortable, stopped seeing ghosts. We allowed ourselves to believe the things we were told instead of trusting what we learned. We befriended locals, talked to children through interpreters, and tried to be ambassadors to the people. And then, in the middle of a dust storm, a little girl walked up to our gate, draped in explosives. It wasn't by choice, she didn't want to do it. Tears cut trenches through the sand and the grit on her cheeks. She trembled as she walked, sobbing and knowing her fate. She had a stuffed animal in her arms, a gift we'd given her 1 week before. She held it tight against her chest, squeezing it to her heart as she took her final steps. She was 10 years old, celebrating her first birthday as a free Iraqi citizen. Boom. Another decade goes by. At least there's rest and sleep, until there isn't. There's a creak, a sound that doesn't belong in the silence of night, and I'm bolt upright in bed. My wife's still asleep beside me. The door of my room is open, a faint glow from the hallway nightlight, silhouetting an outline. I see a person, a shadow made real. Before I tell myself, it's just a ghost. I'm seeing ghosts again. My heart races, my chest tightens, but I know to focus on my breathing. So I close my eyes, squeeze them hard, tell myself, I'm in bed, we're safe. That when I open my eyes, there's nothing there but a bedroom. And then I do. I open my eyes with slow deliberation, and I see a girl. She has tears streaming down her face. Sobs choke her breath, make it hard for her to speak. There's fear in her eyes, a real primal fear that we forget about if we live in safety long enough. She has a stuffed animal clenched tightly to her chest, two trembling arms. I want to tell her to stop walking, stop taking those steps. But I know she won't understand me. She's somewhere else, just as I am. Daddy, I heard a monster, my daughter says. Her puppy trembles as she stands in terror, shakes along with her body. Come here, honey, I say. I squeeze her tight, trying to remember we're safe. Everything's okay. Don't be scared, I said, still holding her, sharing her tears, sharing her trembling. You're just seeing ghosts. You're only seeing ghosts. Boo. Thank you.
I'd like to call up to the stage Dr. Mark Santel from the Providence Clemente Veterans Initiative.
On behalf of the Providence Clemente Veterans Initiative, or PCVI, I'd like to welcome all of you this evening. My name is Mark. I've been the academic director of the PCVI since it began in January of 2019. What is the PCVI? It provides free humanities classes to Rhode Island veterans, regardless of discharge status, deployment, age, rank, disability, or education. PCVI scholars explore history, art, literature, and philosophy from the ancient Greeks to the present. We partner with Trinity for dramatic readings and discussions and for events like this. Participants can earn college credits, but most of the folks who join do so seeking community, self-understanding, renewed purpose, and a greater intellectual sense of their complex, often bruising experiences. Why the humanities for veterans, you might ask? Well, the humanities can help us to understand multiple points of view and to come to terms with our place in the world. They do this by inviting us to delve into a wide variety of stories, events, and ideas that reveal how people have lived and thought throughout history. Stories, Vietnam veteran Tim O'Brien writes, are for joining the past to the future. They help us to see that we're not alone. They help us to see old places with new eyes. Veterans have experienced powerful and positive things: pride, a deep sense of purpose, and a profound tribal bond that can leave them feeling profoundly unmoored when they get home, where those things can be hard to find. Having seen the thin filter that separates life from death and good people from bad actions, some come home feeling soul-bruised, unknown and unknowable, even to themselves. We are marked with a secret sign that you cannot see, wrote Jules Isaac, a French World War I veteran. Tonight you'll hear from 9 veterans who have participated in the PCVI. They're diverse in their backgrounds, their experiences, and in the things they've chosen to share with us tonight. These fellow citizens of ours are intimately familiar with duty. It is our duty tonight to listen. Military service isn't very common in the United States today. Too often, when we do turn toward our veterans, we do so with words and gestures that can feel trite or inadequate. They become symbols, not complex individual human beings, with stories and ideas and emotions that they need to share and that we need to hear. As many veterans will tell you, thank you for your service too often feels like an empty gesture. What's more important, especially for those of us like me who haven't served, is to listen. I'm struck tonight by the power of the ghost light and the green light Trinity has on display tonight. When soldiers returned home from France after the Great War, they often referred to themselves as les revenants, translated as the returned, but also as the ghosts. No one returns from war unchanged. We've known this since Ajax returned home from the Trojan War and took his own life. And we will know it still if we care to listen and to keep that light on, come what may. We need to listen to what veterans have to say, not just because it might be a step toward healing and community for them, but because they have wisdom to impart that we cannot access any other way. We need to hear what they have to say, not just to share their pride in their own accomplishments, but to share at least some of the burden of their pain and loss, too. They carry all of these things because we've asked them to. They don't put those burdens down when they come home, as their loved ones can tell you. We shouldn't either. So our first PCBI graduate who's come up to speak tonight is Dennis Taylor. Dennis is a veteran of the U.S. Army, 82nd Airborne. He served 5 years, was deployed for Operation Just Cause in Panama and Operation Desert Shield in the Middle East. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Lights are bright. Imagine a warm afternoon in downtown Providence. Lucky for me, it wasn't that oppressive city heat of August that slaps you in the face or sits on your shoulders and makes it hard to breathe. Just June, sitting next to the Providence River in a gazebo with Caitlin. We all showed up early that Saturday morning, 8 a.m. We came down to help set up Waterfire, that carnival, performance art, ritualistic community gathering. And we needed to get an early start to have the stage set for a sunset curtain call. Most of us have done this before, maybe many times. So we knew the job and eagerly embraced it. I was to build the unlit fire in the braziers that ran the length of the river, me and 7 others in Athena, the smallest of the Waterfire boats. 6 other boats were assigned the same task in other parts of the river. After 4 hours of loading and unloading, perhaps 3 cords of pine, each brazier was set with a specific, detailed structure that would slowly ignite and transform into the conflagration with the lightest touch of a torch at sunset. The procession of black boats slid gracefully up to the Crawford dock, and each found a cleat to call home. A few dozen sweaty volunteers climbed the ramp up from the river and headed for the lunch tent, just tired enough after a long morning. That's where the volunteer coordinator found me. Dennis, can you do gazebo watch for me? She smiled. I knew I was the first person she thought of, not the first she asked. And that's how I came to spend my afternoon with Caitlin, her intern, guarding the sound equipment that sits under the gazebo. I already knew a bit about her, just old enough to drink. Student at Johnson & Wales, interning at Waterfire. She began to ask me, and that's where it began. Yes, indeed, I'd served in the Army. Then came the usual questions. I was an infantryman, had been deployed. I had shot people, most likely killed them. Poor Caitlin was stunned, but I wasn't done. I could see that she didn't take me for an Army killer, a savage of war. And she sat there stunned, sputtering. We watched more people walk by, and I let her soak it all in. I told her, you just never know. As more people walked by, all of these anonymous people walked by us had stories, and I began to make some of them up. That lady, she could have been a Black Hawk pilot in Germany. The guy in the truck, he might still be thinking about friends he lost in Iraq. This one with the briefcase, he might have been a JAG in the Navy. The point is that you never know who that person walking by is, what they've been through, what they've done. As for veterans, we're all around you, though you might not know it. We don't all wear the hat that identifies the branch we served in, or have a metal leg. These days, we all choose a path that separated us from you folks, you civilians. We served in different places, some with an M16, some with a pencil and paper, others with a radio or a truck. And we were all affected by our time in service. The thing to know is that we're all back, and we want to pick up where we left off, as hard as that might be. After all, who can forget the past 4 years and be a high school senior again? The bright side is that veterans have learned a thing or two while they were away. We became part of a team. So we had to drop part of our individuality and became at least a little bit selfless. As part of that team, we had to learn how to follow, which might not be as easy as it sounds. We pay attention to details so that we can fulfill the intent of the leaders. And we finish the task no matter how hard and no matter what obstacles are in the way. And then some of us actually become the leader. Leadership is not just telling people what to do. Leaders have to understand what needs to be done and then have to figure out a way to accomplish the mission. A fancy way to say get the job done. What do you think corporations pay to train their new hires in that precious skill? Following, leading, working part as a team are just 3 of the soft skills that we learn in service. Then there are the specifics that we learn as part of a military occupational specialty, or an MOS. You'll see 2 digits and a letter to identify what each person is trained to do. 11 is the code for infantry, and the letter B was my designation as an infantryman, the guys that you see in the movies that carry guns into battle. We call it 11 Bravo. Change the letter to C and you're an infantry mortarman. 36B is financial management, the folks that do the paperwork that get us paid. If you want to have fun someday, look up the different MOSs that serve, like 91 Bravo, 36 Bravo, 18 Echo. All that training makes for a great employee and someone who has a step up on most civilians as the head of your fleet maintenance at the post office, or your bank manager, or a police officer. And then there are the hard lessons, the ones that leave scars on our souls. Plato gives us the allegory of the cave, where 2 philosophers talk about someone who has walked out of the darkness and into the glaring light of reality. Veterans have seen some of this harsh reality and learned some painful lessons about themselves, their friends, and the cruelties of the wide world, some that leave scars. Perhaps the most valuable gift we have to give our civilian community is to share those scars so that our communities can grow stronger. Plato would have us go back into the darkness of that cave and share what we've learned. As I sit there with Caitlin in the warm afternoon of a water fire day, I invite her to see the anonymous passerby and to think who they might be and what they might have to offer. Imagine the 11 Bravo, the 18 Delta, the 91 Charlie, and where they might have been. I invite her to appreciate the veteran, most specifically for all the extra gifts that they have to give our communities, while we guard the electronics in the gazebo. I invite you to do the same. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, too. I'm not the only veteran that's going to do that tonight, so bear with us. Bill Millett retired from the U.S. Army Reserve as a lieutenant colonel in 2015 after 28 years of service, including mobilizations for Desert Storm in 1991, Operation Joint Endeavor in Bosnia in 1996, Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2004 and 5, and Operation Enduring Freedom, Horn of Africa in 2010 and 2011. Bill?
It's November 8th, 2004. My son Liam will be turning 7 today. I won't be with him. I'm in Baghdad, commanding a civil affairs company, operating in an area that includes Sadr City, a poverty-stricken district crammed with more than 1 million Shia Muslims. 7 months ago, an uprising there resulted in 8 Americans killed and more than 50 wounded in a single day of fighting. Conditions have improved a bit since then, but they remain tense. During my first conversation with the commander of the brigade my unit supports, when I had informed him that the company of 42 civil affairs soldiers then assigned to his brigade would be replaced by my company of just 24 soldiers, the commander had looked me squarely in the eye and told me he needed me to maintain the same number of teams as the unit we were replacing. We had done that, but it meant stripping my command element down to the bare minimum. And while my predecessor had 3 officers working with him, I am getting by with a corporal. What I'm not getting is a lot of sleep. Our mission today involved meetings in the Green Zone and a stop by our battalion to address administrative and logistical issues. As we are preparing to return to our FOB, I am summoned to the commander's office for an urgent call. My life, the lives of my soldiers, and the lives of my and my soldiers' families are forever owed as I learn that one of my soldiers, Corporal Brian L. Freeman Jr., has been killed by a sniper's bullet outside of Al-Zahra Mosque. It is November 8th, 2005, Liam's 8th birthday, and 1 year since Sergeant Freeman's death. I am home from Iraq. I am serving as the ops officer for the 443rd Civil Affairs Battalion in Warwick, Rhode Island. While I have already been away from my civilian position, working with parachutes for the Army for more than 3 years, I have agreed to remain on orders to help the 443rd get back on track for what is sure to be another mobilization in the near future. My home life is not really on track, though. While my time in Iraq had been my 3rd mobilization, it was the first since the birth of our 2 sons. Readjustment has not been easy. I came home to a different house, literally and figuratively. While I was in Iraq, my wife had informed me that she wasn't comfortable in our first home, that she felt the neighborhood had deteriorated while I studied Arabic at the Defense Language Institute, and that she no longer felt it was safe for her and the boys. Half a world away, struggling with too few people and too little sleep, I was in no position to do anything but acquiesce to her request to move. And so, capable woman that she is, she had bought a new house, sold our first, and moved from one to the other almost entirely on her own. Unfortunately, she had also shed some of my belongings during that move. I'm angry about this. I'm angry about other issues related to the move. I'm angry because my wife has been operating for so long without me that it no longer seems as if I have a place in the family. I am angry because I am almost certainly suffering from undiagnosed PTSD. It's November 8th, 2011. Liam is turning 14, and Sergeant Freeman has been dead for 7 years. I'm just home from a year in Djibouti as the Deputy Director of Civil Military Operations at the Combined Joint Task Force, Horn of Africa. My time in Africa was professionally rewarding, but my personal life is in shambles. My wife faced the challenge of running a household and raising 2 boys on her own again during my deployment. One struggling through middle school with ADHD, the other bored and sometimes disruptive at his elementary school. Despite having more opportunities for communication than on any previous deployment, we have grown increasingly distant and apart. And in the months to come, we will participate in counseling to work towards salvaging our relationship. It is November 8th, 2020. Liam turned 23 today. Sergeant Freeman was killed by a sniper's bullet 16 years ago at age 31. A photo of his gravesite at the Beverly National Cemetery in New Jersey serves as the lock screen on my iPhone. He is in my thoughts daily, but particularly on this day, the anniversary of his death. I have been retired from the Army Reserves for 5 years. The VA has diagnosed me with PTSD and provided me with counseling. I still work for the Army with personnel parachutes, and I have recently returned from investigating a fatal accident at Fort Stewart, Georgia. I've participated in a dozen or so of these investigations, which my VA counselor believes aggravates my PTSD. In this case, that's almost certainly true. The investigation was easily the most tumultuous of any I've participated in, leaving me drained and dejected. I'm at a low point. I've never felt so distant and disconnected in all aspects of my life. The pandemic is almost certainly intensifying things, but just the baseline is bad enough. My wife and I share hardly any intimacy, either physically or emotionally. She seems wedded to her job, while I am burnt out by mine. I always struggle on this day, a day that once signified only a celebration of Liam's birth, but that now serves as a reminder of the costs of war, and particularly a war that didn't need to be fought. This year is worse than any before. I've had thoughts of committing suicide in the past, but they are more present and persistent now than ever before. I have known soldiers who took their lives after returning from war. I don't want to do it. I don't want to bring pain to others, but I don't want to live with the way I'm feeling. It's today, November 6, 2021. In 2 days, it will be 24 years since Liam was born, and 17 years since Sergeant Freeman was killed. I will not be able to speak with or have any contact with Liam on his birthday. I can only communicate with my wife by phone, text, or email. There was an altercation at our dinner table on the night before Father's Day this year, and though I was the one who dialed 911 for help, I was the one who, after some crack investigative work by the Cumberland Police Department, ended up being arrested. I could talk for hours about that, but I think we'd all rather be at Waterfire. But if I thought a year ago that things could get any worse, I was wrong. Things could get worse. Things did get worse. It's been a few months of hell. Being placed in handcuffs, spending time in a jail cell, wondering where I'm going to live, worrying about my security clearance and my job, appearing in court as a defendant, not being able to have a beer with my younger son, Sam, on his 21st birthday because, as a participant in the Rhode Island Veteran Treatment Court program, I'm prohibited from drinking alcohol and am subject to random toxicological screening. Meaning I have to drive to Warwick to piss in a cup whenever I place my daily call to the court's color line and hear on the recording that the color red is the color of the day. Moving into an apartment where the landlord's idea of cleaning is to slap some paint on everything. Literally everything. From tape on the wall to soap scum on the shower walls. Don't bother cleaning it, just slap some paint on it. Reading in an email from my wife that she hasn't respected me for 5 years, which, to be honest, explains a lot. I don't really know how to wrap this up. The story isn't over. I have a lot more to say, and a lot of other stories I'd like to tell. I probably tried at least half a dozen different ways to end this, but each of them just seemed to be a launching point for another story, and I've probably already gone well over my time limit already. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Being listened to is so important. So important. So thank you. Thank you. I'm going to be all right. It's going to take some time, and probably not going to be an easy road, but I'm going to be all right. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Rachel Garcia. Rachel served in the Air Force Security Forces from 2005 to 2008. She was deployed to Iraq in 2005-2006 as a gunner and convoy security fire team leader, where she was awarded the Iraqi Freedom Medal with a Bronze Star. Today, she's the Director of Veterans Affairs and Military Programs at URI, supporting student veterans, service members, and their families' transition into civilian life, into education, and beyond. Rachel was named the 2021 Women Veteran of the Year for Rhode Island. Rachel.
I'm happy that the light is on my face because it's really, I'm nervous, and so it's nice that, well, not that I don't want to see all your faces, but it's kind of nice. Good evening. Thank you to PCBI and friends for the honor of being here tonight. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I have been fortunate enough to have been in the first PCBI Providence cohort and to also be included later in other cohorts as an alum. So thank you. The courage to read, write, and speak to the most vulnerable pieces of our lives embraces so many emotions that listing them took way too long to put into this intro. So I just want to preface in that this reading that I'm doing is a thought. It's a journal entry, it's a thought. It's consistent to how my thoughts work, but this is something that's been on my mind for a long time, and it continues to be part of my thought process and kind of how I navigate the world. So not only am I a veteran, I am a friend, a sister, a comrade, and a mother. One of the deepest insecurities as a human is the ability to balance the mission-focused work that I care for, my struggle with visible and invisible wounds, and to raise a beautiful human, to be a good mother. My daughter started her journey in this world, born into a military life, accustomed to change and uncertainty, moving constantly and changing schools, changing friends. I've never really understood whether my military experience and the memories that present as my emotions affect her. It was a few weeks ago, right before Mark had asked me to do this, that my daughter shared with me that she was writing an essay entitled, "How Can I Be a Good American?" I wondered what she would write. How does she interpret the world? How does she interpret being a good American? So I'd like to share with you what she wrote. How to be a good American. Being an American is a luxury. Coming from immigrant grandparents, I see how important America is to people. My abuela told me that when she was a kid, she was working, providing for her siblings. She was 8. I think about that story a lot. I think about how in America it's illegal for kids under 14 to work. Now think about third world countries, that's reality for them. There is no money from the government, they must work for every penny they earn. As a kid, I constantly think, I don't want to do this chore. Do I really have to take the garbage out now? Then when I think about my abuela's story, I can't help but just feel grateful. Grateful that I don't have to work for my family. Thankful that I have a roof over my head. Thankful that I don't wake up every day fearing for my life. I feel in this day and age, there is so much hate and violence. Being in America is like a haven. I don't disagree that there isn't hate and violence in America, but America doesn't have it as bad as other countries. Being a girl in America is a luxury too. I think about all the girls in other countries that don't get rights, education, freedom of speech, and I can't help but feel grateful that I have all of those things. While I'm still in 8th grade, and sometimes don't want to get up to go to school, I then think about all the girls that can't, and it makes me feel hopeful. Not only for my future, but for theirs. Things are changing. The way us as people and us as a country affects the world is up to us. We can bring it down with more violence, hate, and anger, or we can bring it up with peace, love, and happiness. We as people can be the change, we can be the future. So next time you think about all those little things you don't want to do, think about the people who can't do them and do them for them. That is what being a good American is to me. So we have so many intersectionalities as veterans. I work in a field that allows me to disrupt social stigmas and stereotypes of veterans. I'm very thankful for the work that I do. I think of what veterans are portrayed as. I do an exercise with civilians quite often that I have them write down all the words that they associate with the word veteran. And I try to ensure that at the end of this exercise, there's a difference between what we see as the military and what we see as a veteran. A veteran is a human being, the military is an organization. So within this exercise, there's words that are consistent: hard, homeless, PTSD, PTS, historically white, historically male, gun-loving. Occasionally I'll see the word heroes, combat, GI Bill, and oftentimes I'll see license plates. While some of this may be true, it does not include us all. Yet we are veterans. We are mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, comrades, and friends. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say I'm very proud of my daughter. I'm very proud of being a veteran. And I'm very, very, very proud of myself, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you. So I am happy to introduce Jay Holland. Jay Holland grew up in Harmony, Rhode Island. He currently resides in West Warwick, Rhode Island. Jay entered military service in 1967 and retired in 1994. He served in South Vietnam, South Korea, Hawaii, United Kingdom, Italy, Germany, Panama, and various bases in the United States. Welcome, Jay.
Good evening. I hate those things. My name is Jay Holland. I'm a veteran of the Vietnam War. I'm sure we all remember that, even though it was a long time ago. And trust me when I tell you, it's right up here today. It's never left me. I served in Vietnam between May 1969 and April of 1970. I was assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group. My detachment was tasked with monitoring the movement of North Vietnamese forces using the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which wound down from North Vietnam through Laos and Cambodia and into South Vietnam. In order to carry out our mission, small element reconnaissance teams consisting of 6 to 8 mixed American and indigenous Montagnard tribesmen would be inserted by helicopter into target areas in Laos or Cambodia, where we would stealthily seek to locate or verify NVA or VC unit locations and activities. Occasionally, we would set up near the trail and attempt to capture a prisoner or call for air support in order to attack vehicle convoys moving troops and equipment southward. Our missions generally lasted 5 to 6 days if we went undetected by the NVA or VC. I did this work for nearly 12 months. On April 10th of 1970, I finally received orders to return to the U.S. a few days earlier than I had planned. I eventually caught a flight headed to Fort Lewis, Washington on April 11th, where we landed early in the morning on April 12th. After trading my old worn jungle fatigues for new uniforms, I ended up at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, where I would catch a flight to Boston later in the morning. I remember sitting in the lounge area of the terminal just watching people going about their business, smelling the scents of America, fried food and coffee, etc. Our Krishnas were peddling peace on earth to any who would listen, while anti-war activists were there shouting insults at soldiers like me, waiting for our flights. I still remember this one girl who appeared to be shouting obscenities in my direction. She wanted to burn my green beret because I was murdering skunk. She kept flicking a Zippo lighter to underscore her threat. Thankfully, the protesters were kept behind a rope line by cops, or there might have been trouble. I tried to call my folks and let them know I was back, but they were not home. Everything had happened so fast. I had gone from a primitive combat outpost in the mountains of central South Vietnam to the relative peace of America in about 30 or so hours, without any preparation for this transition. I eventually caught my flight to Boston. I arrived in the early evening hours and promptly called my folks. They were totally surprised. I tried to explain about the haste of my departure and travel, but that didn't save me from being somewhat scolded by my dad for being inconsiderate about the short notice. I remember hanging up the phone and thinking about how he had talked to me. It was like no time had passed since I graduated from high school and joined the Army. It made me pretty angry. They picked me up in front of the terminal. There was an awkward moment as we checked each other out, which lasted until my brother ran over and bear hugged me. I remember the ride home clearly. Dad drove. The Beatles were singing on the radio, "Here Comes the Sun," while my mother held onto my arm. Otherwise, there was complete silence in the car because nobody knew what to say. After we arrived home, everyone went off to bed except my father. He asked me about my time in Vietnam. What had I done? What were my responsibilities, etc. In truth, because of the highly classified nature of my duties, I had never really explained specifically what it was that I was involved with exactly. Now he wanted to know. Even though I had signed a non-disclosure agreement, and a pretty serious one, prior to leaving the detachment, I began to tell him about the cross-border operations into Laos and Cambodia and what that entailed. I really needed to confide in him and let him know that I had seen and done some hard things while operating there. Shortly after I started telling him things, he signaled that I should stop right there. He said, "There are no American troops operating in those places, or it would have been reported." And he was also an officer in the National Guard, and said, "I would have heard of such things." He said, "Stop exaggerating and making things up." He looked at me with that old disdain in his eyes, as if he'd caught me with my hands in the cookie jar again. I was both shocked and immediately consumed with rage. He didn't believe me. Here he was trying to put me in my place in the old family hierarchy, and reassert his dominance as the king of the roost at possibly the worst moment he could have chosen to do so. I never forgave him for that, and that ended any further conversation. I needed his affirmation, his acknowledgement that I was worthy of his respect, his admiration even. He dodged it and denied me what I needed most from him. Homecoming from war can be a bittersweet experience unless all parties are prepared for it. That's the theme of my talk. In closing, I would also like to say a few things about the PCVI curriculum and its value, which have challenged some of my previously held beliefs. I never had much exposure to the humanities side of education prior to this course. I read some poetry written by soldiers who fought in the trenches of World War I that viscerally described the horrors of that conflict. I hated poetry until I read their words and forgot that I was even reading poetry. I was fascinated by my ability to identify with the authors of those works of literature, Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon. Perhaps some of you have heard of them. So I decided to write my own, which I had never done before, and I will read it for you now. This is based on something that happened to me. I titled it Anniversary. I knew them well so long ago. Their personalities, their stories, their joys, their sorrows, a familiar theme. How can I not remember their names? Yet still hear their voices, their laughter, their curses. A sudden flash of light. The earth shakes and dances to an unholy dirge. Dirt, dust everywhere. The noise of clap of thunder. So deafening it reaches out, it touches me, it throws me. Then for an instant, silence so loud. Senses are dulled and withdrawn, but just for a moment. The storm passes, leaving nothing but a hole in the ground. Surrounded by the wreckage of what was once my charge, all of them gone. I'm alone now forever, except when I go to bed. That's it from me. Thank you. It's funny how you read something and it all comes back. It's amazing. In any case, Cecil Hickman served in the U.S. Army in Vietnam for 14 months, starting in 1970. He was permanently disabled from Agent Orange. Since coming home, he has worked as a journalist, a news director, a poet, playwright, and a university educator. Come on up, Cecil.
Thank you for your service. Have you ever thought of this? If I knew then what I know now, I might have done things differently. Anybody ever feel that? Yeah. If I knew then what I know now, my brother might still be alive. Persian Gulf War syndrome. If I knew then what I know now, my sister might not have suffered assault in the Navy. I might have been able to handle it. And if I knew then what I know now, I might have understood our dad. Couldn't figure him out, ever, until one moment. Lamar's going to play me, a Vietnam War veteran, and I am going to play my dad. This was a moment in which he revealed something we never knew.
My dad, a World War II vet, one gnarly dude. Sleeps all day in his tiny Midwestern house, curses at the world all evening, paces back and forth from the living room to the kitchen. No one knows why. Then he leaves, closed all night. A mail handler at the post office, year after year, tossing 100-pound bags from one spot to another. Then back to that cozy bungalow to snore through the day and start the cycle all over again. I only drop by for Mom's breakfast biscuits and K-Roll soup. Oh, what the hell are you doing up so early?
Just got the morning news. The embassy is falling in Saigon. Mob tearing up the place. Helicopters rescuing people off the roof. Damn it, we're losing your war.
Yeah, I already know. I really don't care. I'm not watching that shit. I used to drive by that building all the time, nothing special. Serves us right for getting in that stupid war. See, I didn't want to go there. I got drafted. I was kicking and screaming though. Your war is different. You lied about your age and volunteered for yours. Yours was popular. Mine, not so much. Dad, why are you not looking off in space like that?
It was a troop ship. I was on a troop ship in 1945. A troop ship out of Okinawa. Headed about 23 knots outside Japan, the coast of Japan. I was a cook. Hey, the skipper bullhorn, I heard him. He said, "We're steaming past Nagasaki." I remember the choppy waters, dreary skies, the routine, the drone of the engines.
Wait a minute. Did you say Nagasaki?
What the? Exploding flash, bright as day, like the 4th of July. What the hell is that?
Dad, say something. What do you see?
It's hell on earth. A huge cloud, writhing, billowing, roaring, a humongous mushroom-shaped cloud. I'm slammed, knocked off my feet, boat rocking, a huge wave.
Nagasaki? Cloud? You saw the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb. No wonder why you're all fucked up.
Oh my God. How many gone? How many souls gone? I saw them. I see them night after night after night. I see them all.
Pop, I've been in your life for nearly 30 years. When were you ever going to tell me this? That was my crazy old man. He never mentioned that disaster before. He never brought it up again. I asked him over and over again, but he refused to talk about it. Just walk back and forth, every night before work. And this GI Bill home.
Thank you.
Special thanks to my co-producer, Susan Catherine Collier. I do want to say, I think when we leave a combat zone, war, we don't leave it, do we?
Sarah Kavanaugh is coming up next. There it is. Sarah is a Marine Corps veteran, served from 2007 to 2016, including 2 deployments to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan. Sarah joined the PCBI during its first year and has returned since to assist with teaching the course. Sarah finds meaning in her service through the study of moral injury, philosophy, and oral history.
Thank you, Mark, for introducing me tonight and recognizing my service. I appreciate you for not calling me the Marine's wife. I thought he was part of that joke, being that I'm not married to a man. I want to thank Mark, Cheryl Foster, who's here from URI, who teaches us philosophy, Suzanne Scalen, who's here from RISD, for creating this course, facilitating it every week for us, and really giving us an opportunity to broaden our horizons and work through our service. I greatly appreciate the warrior poets who are here tonight, who came here to share, for your ability to rise up and beseech us, for it brings a message of hope and purpose and truth to greet us. I'm going to share with you a poem I wrote that is untitled, and I hope you enjoy it. I remember the stories of Priam and the men he led, how they wept freely after battle until they were so weak they had to lie in bed. I'm home, but the house is gone. The yellow ribbons taken off the trees, replaced with sleepless nights and endless therapy sessions. Sessions where verbs and nouns are strung together with razor wire that surrounds my memory. I remember the flowers with roots of live wire, prepared to detonate with just the weight of a deep breath. Even the wind feels different in war. I remember coming home the first, second, and third time to the houses that stood the same after 11 months apart, on the streets that never changed, and the people behind the doors of the same houses on those same streets who patiently waited for their Marine to return home unmaimed. I remember how our first weeks there were filled with promise and hope, but then hope was medevacked from a shot to the throat. Promise took a blast right outside of camp. Luckily, he survived, only now he's a triple lamp. I remember realizing the existence of war is dependent on human offering. A sacrifice manifested in a young being's potential, unrequited hope. I remember my first love letter to my junior Marines, filled with agony and despair, apologizing deeply for the black bracelets they now had to wear. For I saw his potential, the same as I did in the rest of you, apologizing deeply but when Anne-Marie breaks early, there's nothing we can do. It will be hard to explain the attention to detail, the placement of ribbons, medals, badges, lengths, inseams, and all those damn IPs. The geometry and symmetry, pomp and circumstance. No, they can't even begin to understand until you're carefully pinning onto perfectly pressed dress blues, your own earned ribbons, to bury a man who earned them beside you. For this is the journey of the Corps, losing one another with or without war, and it's going to hurt when someone asks you what that bracelet is for. But remember this, our hearts beat louder, break harder, love stronger, fight longer. I remember the place where patriots burned their own temples to the ground, hoping it would save them from the sorrows of war, a war that demanded attacks on its participants, blood and soul, where the great men of war preferred vice over virtue, and the partisan appearance of virtue bred nothing but hate. Remember who you were before the desert, before deployment, before the familiar sound of taps, before the racks of ribbons stacked your chest. I remember the first time I put mine on. They were the heaviest things I ever wore. Thank you. Pleasure of introducing Mike Quinn. Mike Quinn was captivated by the ads that promised the opportunity to see the world and enlisted in the Navy the day after his 17th birthday and served from 1973 to 1975. His interest was in visiting the exotic places on the planet, but what the military exposed him to was much more profound. Being exposed to foreigners, Southerners, Blacks, Latinos, and others helped him to better understand things like prejudice, privilege, racism, neglect, abuse, and historical inaccuracies. Those things challenged what he knew at the time and helped to redefine who he thought he was. Mike Quinn.
Thank you, sir. Our nation now resides in an environment of divisiveness that has pitted family, friends, neighbors, entire states, and large sections of the country against each other. We all seem to be struggling with the definition of what it is to be a patriotic American, as seen through how we personally feel about immigration, equality, loyalty, and justice. We often find ourselves questioning the people that we thought that we knew. We walk away shaking our heads, wondering, how can they think like that? Creon and Antigone provide us with that very same scenario. What are our obligations? Who are we accountable to? And how far are we willing to go to meet those demands? We seem to be at a crossroads today, very much confused between our inherent rights as Americans and what is necessary to be decent, as seen through the teachings of Christ, Buddha, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and others. How is it that abhorrent acts perpetrated against perceived enemies are acceptable to some and not others? The existence of those differences had come more to life for me when I entered the military and have perplexed me for most of my life. Neuroscience seeks answers to how the brain does what it does. Why do we think the way that we do? How do our thoughts shape our personality, act as a guidance towards our actions and beliefs? Back in 1949, neuropsychologist Donald Hebb researched the process of habit formations, from which he coined the phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. The firing of neurons means that the more you run a neural circuit in your brain, the stronger the circuit becomes. And this is why practice makes perfect. The more you practice, for instance, the piano, a foreign language, juggling, racism, white supremacy, or just basically being mean, the stronger those circuits become. This is why the practice of gratitude can be so powerful. The environment where we are being raised and mentored plays a crucial role in how we think and form our opinions. It begins at birth. The brain begins collecting information, just like a sponge absorbs water. Our brain gathers information from our families, friends, teachers, books, the media, and through joyful and traumatic experiences, both consciously and unconsciously. Studies have found that we are able to retain information more readily by repeatedly inundating our brains with specific information. The brain will absorb through the wiring and firing of neurons, and as a result, a chemical reaction imprints an image, not unlike that of a Polaroid negative. By constantly and consistently feeding the brain with a specific thought, we strengthen the neural circuitry for that thought. The research has determined that this is how we develop our opinions, habits, and eventually our personalities. When we are faced with a decision, we can either take a stance that is simply driven by power and control, or we can ascertain the moral consequences and obligations associated with it. Creon was raised within the elite sector of the society and was educated in such a way that clearly distinguished from all other classes. The elite are often led to believe that their standing in life is a right that has been ordained by a higher authority, being aristocratic, political, or even the gods themselves. They are taught to see themselves in a shining light of superiority over all things. It's associated with a level of arrogance that has destroyed our environment, initiated unnecessary wars, and denied generations opportunities. The preordained era of authority allows an abuse of power that does not require moral filters as guidance. Repeated threats, unfounded accusations, and constant demoralizing of those who disagree with authority is a demonstration of unbridled superiority. People in power, like Creon, whose arrogance with words, actions, and policies are dehumanizing and designed to clearly differentiate us from them. There was much suffering and lives lived in a state of fear because of how Creon's character exhibited an overwhelming sense of superiority. Referenced through the phrases that he used throughout the tragedy. He accuses, boasts, assumes, insults, and threatens those he encountered with impunity. Whoever isn't for us is against us. Understand, therefore, that I intend to make good on what I say by what I do. And hear this first. This ordinance is binding. Antigone, and all of these accusations are meant to vilify and demean by dehumanizing the enemy in the interest of all people. Antigone is completely the opposite of that example. Although she too had been raised in the elite class, she had a much different integration with her mentoring and tutoring for two primary reasons. First off, as a woman, she was considered a second-class citizen within that society. Secondly, being an incest daughter of Oedipus, she lived her life shrouded in a cloud of shame. and how differently these conditions shaped Ismene and her purposeful but defiant sister, Antigone. There is nothing, sister, nothing Zeus hasn't put us through, just because of who we are, the daughters of Oedipus. We unwittingly become a product of our thoughts. What we think drives our behavior and ultimately forms our personality, shaping the person that we become. When as young children we are inundated with the kinds of information that clearly informs us that we're inherently better and more deserving than others, most of us will tend to believe some or all of it. There are those who are not so easily accepted of that position and are constantly and consciously considering the expectations and responsibilities. In the end, Antigone does not waver in her decision to defy Creon. She proceeded to do the proper thing in burying her brother, even when that choice became a matter of life or death. Is she a headstrong woman bent on becoming a martyr? Or is she being directed by an inner voice that gives her no choice? Antigone's example demonstrated the unmistakable power of what it means to have defined constitution and a moral compass. Her purpose in life and death depended on it. Creon's example is about unfettered power, and not at all about moral accountability. Creon doesn't feel anything until he's directly affected by his own carelessness and obvious failings, not only as a leader, but more importantly, as a human being. He had shown that his external hardened shell of superiority prevented the internal seeds of morality from sprouting. Antigone and Creon represent some of the best and some of the worst traits that are possible in all of us. Thankfully, we don't have Creon's power to rule, but we often find ourselves in situations where we have some power over others. And how we address that depends on those thoughts that have excited the neurons to wire and fire the most. Thank you. I'd like to introduce up here next Dora Vasquez Hellner. She's an Army veteran of 23 years. She continues to serve our veterans and community on a daily basis. Dora is currently the state commander of the Rhode Island Veterans of Foreign Wars, representing over 3,000 veterans. She was the 2020 Woman Veteran of the Year in Rhode Island.
So as I was sitting here trying to figure out how did Mark assign our order, it wasn't just by chance that I'm following Mike. It was through PCBI that I discovered my connection with Antigone. Antigone, who made the hard right. That was her driving force. And after learning about Antigone, this woman continues to be my driving force with everything that I do since learning about her. So Mark, thank you for having me follow Mike. That means a lot to me, thank you. And I will also tell you that after discovering PCBI is one of several tribes that I have. And although I've graduated from PCBI, this is a gift that just keeps on giving. In fact, with Mark, he took the time to reach out to several of our women warriors with the piece that he had come across. And that piece is what I'm going to share with all of you this evening. As I was reading through it, I realized this is me. Because I've recently found myself using the first line every time I call the VA. Hi, this is Dora. I am the vet. I am the veteran. I shouldn't have to do that, but I'm just really tired of, am I calling for my husband? Am I calling for my dad? No, I am the veteran. So the piece I am going to read has been written by Tanya Whitney, one of my Army sisters. She retired after 27 years. And again, her words, I can truly relate to. Standing proud, standing tall. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, do not ask me if I was a nurse, though I am in awe of those who are. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, know that I served the same as my brothers, with the same equipment and missions. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, I do not want you to see me as special. Do not see me as a separate entity. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, it's because I am proud to be a woman. I am a minority in a sea of fellow veterans. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, it's because I am strong, I am capable, I am patriotic to the core. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, do not think it's a joke. Do not demean my service. I served in combat. Many of my brothers did not. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, I want you to see me as a veteran who happens to be a woman. When I say to you, I am a woman veteran, do not blow me off, for you do not know what I have been through. You can never understand the cost my service has had on my body and soul. I am a woman veteran. Thank you. It gives me an honor to introduce Jeremy Bergantini, also known as Berg, who I had the opportunity of being a student with him second semester, but very rarely having the opportunity to see his face. So because of our Zoom sessions, and I don't mean this as a criticism, Berg, but seeing you in person today means the world to me. Berg served in Operation Iraqi Freedom with the Army in 2008 and 2009, where he received a battlefield promotion and was medically discharged. Berg, it's your turn, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. I want to start by taking a moment to truly thank all of you for your time this evening and spending it here with us tonight. Veterans Voices, a Greenlight Ghostlight event, is giving a lot of us an opportunity to share things that we normally wouldn't say to anybody, let alone admit to ourselves. Your willingness to give us your time tonight means a lot more than just repeating an empty phrase. Now, I want to ask you all to think of something for me. want you to think of an animal, cats in particular. I want you to think about the phrase, cats have 9 lives. Have you ever really turned that over in your minds before and thought about what it means and where it comes from? How did it start? Did somebody witness a cat defy death? Maybe they swore a cat had died but saw it the next day, alive and well. What if, instead of any of that, someone observed cats in their day-to-day goings-on, and maybe that made them think about the lives of a cat? What if they thought about the cat's different types of lives, like a social life, an indoor life, an outdoor life, and others? So I'm sure you're wondering why I'm up here talking about cats tonight. Well, I bring this up because I think humans have at least 3 lives at any given time. Our social life, our family life, our love life, and others. You see, I need to tell you a secret. You're listening to a dead man speak. Maybe you've heard other dead speakers tonight. Some, most, maybe all of us here have died in at least one of our lives in service to country and our fellow citizens. Some of us have died socially. We don't have friends. We can't go out in public anymore. We can't handle being in groups or having our back to a window or a door in a public place. We've turned into assholes, angry and snippy all the time for seemingly no reason, the minute we're around people that we don't know intimately. We have died in our families, absent from family functions, or clearly vacant if we do show up. Maybe we're hammered or high. You think we don't see your judgmental looks or hear your sidebars? We know we're a fucking mess, and those things only take us deeper hits or longer pulls from the flask. It's torture for some of us just to show up because of injuries or PTSD, let alone to meet your expectations or to live up to a memory. We have died emotionally. We don't feel emotions like we used to. We don't process them like we used to. Some of us know only hate or anger now, and we can't figure out why. Do you know what it's like to love? Do you know what it feels like to have loved and lost? Now tell me, do you know what it feels like to have loved and then lost the ability to love or to feel loved? We have but fleeting memories of maybe loving something once, long ago. Hell, some of us live every day like we're dead in every respect, not just metaphysical ones. Personally, I grapple most nights with reality itself and trying to figure out if I died when that mortar round landed under the dumpster behind us. Do I know for sure that it didn't go off? Or can my brain not process it, and this whole time I've been in the process of dying, and this is just a DMT-induced hallucination before my light is extinguished? I know that most, if not all of you, are here to try to learn more and gain a better understanding. You might be angry with me for what I'm saying. It's actually a good thing. That means you care, and that's part of the point. I'm not here to tell you the things that make you feel good. I'm not here to tell you how your words lift us up, or how your pity makes us feel better. I'm not here to beg or plead with words that you've heard time and again. I'm here to tell you the things that we have been holding inside for far too long, because we fear losing the little bits of support we get thus far by being brutally honest. I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm here to tell you how most, if not all of us, feel like puzzle pieces without a puzzle. Cast aside together in the junk box of mismatched pieces, dead pens, and forgotten toys. I'm here to talk about how most of us are a different form of dead inside since our time in our respective services. To tell you the true ramifications of war. To tell you how no matter how much some of us try, no matter how much some of you want us to, we can never, ever get back to who we were. I'm here to tell you how we are forever changed and how you should be too. How war isn't a veteran problem or an active duty problem, but how it's a societal problem. How war affects each and every one of us, whether or not we realize or understand how. I'm here to start the conversations we've all needed but have been avoiding. What I want all of you to take away from tonight is that we are more than just veterans. We are human beings that have sometimes seen the absolute depravity of the human soul. That we have been to the event horizon of human decency, and that one cannot just come back from that and not have been affected by its gravity. I want you all to understand that all of us make up our society, and therefore all of us have been to the event horizon, and it's past time for all of us to begin talking about it. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone, each and every one of you, all the faces that are in this moment together. I want to thank every single veteran who took this stage. I want to thank Kevin Lothar, aka Big Lex. I want to thank Thomas Gamache, Dennis Taylor, Bill Millett, Rachel Garcia, Jay Hollis, Cecil Hickman, Lamar Stovall, Sarah Kavanaugh, Mike Quinn, Dora Vasquez-Elmore, and Jeremy Burton. I want to thank Dr. Mark Santel for leading a wonderful program. I've seen so much transformation within it, and I thank you for letting us take a visit into that. We're going to end this night with some more music from an amazing group of folks. I was really inspired by Guitar for Vets. I met them officially on Memorial Day, and I thank Susan Collier for introducing me to them. So let's hear some music, and let's end this night with a little more Guitars for Vets.
Searching
which is great by me. Not that I trampled in solo solo. Thank you very much.
So I don't know how much longer we have to play. We'll play until they turn the lights off, right? I want to thank everybody. Guitar for Vets is a local organization, a local chapter of a national organization. Rachel Garcia is one of my graduates, and we work out of the Vet Center, Warwick, Rhode Island. You can look us up on let's see, guitarsforvets.org. All right, we're going to keep playing, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Two. Oh, we get two. What do we do? This next song is one of my absolute all-time favorites, so I hope you enjoy it. It's called Angel from Montgomery.
Just give me
kindness. Thank all of you for sharing. Have a safe trip back. There you go. Thank you.
This one is for Rachel. Yes?
And